Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. As you can tell by the title, today we're going to be talking about 10 of the things that are banned from mental hospitals. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, my name's Devin. I'm a graduate mental health counseling student, but I've also been dealing with mental illness for basically my entire life. And on this channel, I try to combine both my education and personal experiences to show you guys a more well-rounded view of what mental illness actually looks like. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. I love you guys. Please make sure that you smash that like button and click subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. Now, before we get into the video today, I did want to tell you guys, if you hadn't noticed, that I had chopped my hair off, and I did it myself. I did it last night because honestly, it's too hot down here and I can't handle it anymore. But it's really not even. I'm not a hairdresser. So judge all you want, but know that I am just happy and much more free because I cut off at least like 5 or 6 inches, maybe. I don't know. I did film when I cut my hair, so that video will be up at some point. It may already be up. I'm not exactly sure on the timing yet, but I just wanted to put it out there. I know it's uneven. I don't care. I love it anyways. It's so much cooler. If you've watched my previous video about checking myself into the hospital for suicide, you'll know that I had to give up all of my personal items pretty soon after I got to the ER. I wasn't allowed to have them at all when I was in the mental health unit at my local hospital. However, once I was transferred to a psychiatric unit, I was allowed for my visitors to bring me things, and it was actually encouraged. They wanted you to bring things in such as pictures, a phone list, because I wasn't. It was encouraged that somebody bring us things during visiting hours as soon as they could because we needed things such as extra clothes, toiletries, a toothbrush. There are things that you need to get by, but it's also really important to bring things to do, such as coloring books. We had lots and lots of coloring books. A lot of people also brought in journals so they could pass the time by writing. There's a lot of free time when you're in a mental hospital, so if you have things to try to fill that time, it's helpful. So once I was all checked into the psychiatric hospital, Jake came into visiting hours later that night and brought me a whole bunch of stuff. However, there is still a list of things that aren't allowed to come in. They want you to feel comfortable, but it's still a psychiatric hospital where their whole goal is to keep you safe. Most people are there because they want to harm themselves, so there's a lot of things that aren't allowed. I also just want to put one little note in that these are the things that weren't allowed at the psychiatric hospital that I went to. But every institution, every mental hospital is different. So make sure that you check with the hospital that you or your loved one is in before you try to bring anything in. Now, the first thing that is banned from mental hospitals is probably pretty obvious, but that is any sort of blade, or really anything sharp. Now, this is because a lot of people are in these hospitals because they tried to hurt themselves or because they wanted to hurt themselves. Therefore, you gotta make sure there's nothing they can use in the hospital to do just that. Things such as scissors, razors, nail clippers, all banned. If you wanted to cut your nails, which I do, if you can't tell, I keep my nails very short all the time, and I can't stand when they grow out. It feels weird and they break and it drives me insane. So if at any point you want to cut your nails, you have to file a doctor's order and then that'll take 24 to 48 hours. Then you can go and pick up your set of nail clippers from the same place that you would get your medication from, and somebody watches you while you cut all your nails, just watches you do it, and then you have to give it back immediately. You're never allowed to have it on your own. Razors also aren't allowed, which means that nobody was allowed to shave your legs, your armpits. We had co-ed units, so men couldn't shave their faces. Under this blade rule, the workers at the hospital also just took away anything that they deemed too sharp. I wasn't allowed to have my plastic tongue scraper because they thought that the edge of it was too sharp and I could use it to harm myself. I'm not gonna lie, at the time I thought it was a little ridiculous and I was irritated. But I understand, they'd rather be safe than sorry. So anything that they deem sharp, anything blade-like, is not allowed in a mental hospital. The second thing that is banned from mental hospitals is any sort of rope or rope-like material. And again, this seems kind of obvious. I will let you guys click in your head as to why. But they don't want people who want to harm themselves to be able to find any sort of rope or string. So this means that a lot of things were banned. Shoelaces were not allowed because you could use that as a rope. So instead, a lot of us didn't wear shoes. We had either fuzzy socks or slippers on. The only shoes that people really wore were flip-flops, because if you had tennis shoes, you weren't allowed to have the shoelaces and they wouldn't stay on anyways, so what was the point? We also weren't allowed to have any sort of belt or scarf. We also weren't really allowed to have any sort of belts or scarves, so accessorizing out the window. Because that's what you're worried about in a mental hospital. But sometimes it is. Sometimes you want to look nice. Sometimes you need to keep your pants up. Make sure you have pants that are tight enough, because you can't have a belt. You also can't have pants that tie, or hoodies. You can't have any sort of string in your clothing. If you want that clothing, they have to take the string out of it. For me, I was super concerned with being comfortable while I was there, so all the clothes I told Jake to bring me were comfy clothes. And you'd be surprised how many leisure clothes have strings in them. I couldn't wear like half of the stuff that he brought, which was really annoying. This is also partially the reason why we can't have headphones, because again, they could be used on yourself or somebody else. But you don't really need them anyways, which leads us to our third thing. The third thing that is banned from mental hospitals is most technology. By this, I mean you can't bring your cell phone in, a tablet, a computer, anything with a camera is specifically banned. Now that's because if anyone were to take a picture of the patients, it would be a privacy violation and really the entire place could get shut down. At the time that I was there, they said they were working on trying to figure out a way to let people bring in their own devices while also covering up the cameras and ensuring privacy, because I mean they can put tape on them, but anybody can take that tape off at any point, and if they're not specifically being watched at that moment, then there's an issue. So they were working on that, but I don't think they've gotten anywhere with it. We also weren't allowed to access any sort of social media. There were, I believe, 2 iPads that we could check out to play games on, but all of the social media apps were blocked and you really weren't supposed to be on the internet at all. They want you to take your time while you're in the hospital to focus on yourself and what you need, not to focus on everything that everybody's posting on social media. It was actually pretty nice to have that break. The 2 weeks of no social media, of just being able to unplug and focus on myself and what's going on in the moment. Because we weren't allowed to bring our personal phones in with us, they did give us phones. They were on the wall. They looked like old pay phones, but luckily we didn't actually have to pay for them. And we were allowed to use them most of the time. They were off during like sleeping hours or when we were supposed to be in group. But anytime we had free time, the phones were on and people could call us or we could call them. It was actually pretty easy. Not being able to have this next thing might actually drive some of you guys crazy. But the fourth thing that is banned from mental hospitals is caffeine. Now, again, this is something that you could get around with a doctor's order, but you had to go to the doctor and specifically tell them why you needed that caffeine, and you'd only be given 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and I believe 1 with lunch that had caffeine in it, but that was all you had access to. It's not like you could just get caffeine whenever you want because the doctor said so. For those without that doctor's note, no caffeine. Luckily, when I got diagnosed with colitis at 18 years old, I had to cut caffeine out of my diet, so I didn't have to go through the caffeine headaches or anything like that. But I could see people fiending for it. They would drink decaf coffee all day, every day, because we did have access to that. We had decaf coffee and hot chocolate, I believe decaf hot tea as well. So they would drink those and try to trick their brains into believing that there was actual caffeine in it. Going cold turkey on caffeine is very difficult for a lot of people, but that's because caffeine is a drug. It's legal, but it's still a drug that our body gets addicted to. And that caffeine interacts differently with different psychiatric medications. So in order to keep everybody safe, make sure there's no interaction between the medication and the caffeine, they just cut it out completely. Now, the fifth thing that's banned from mental hospitals is another drug, alcohol. Now, obviously, you can't bring in your favorite six-pack or a fifth and then everybody have a party, even though that would have made our New Year's a little more fun while we were in there. This ban on alcohol is not just on the tequila or the beer. It is also on any alcohol in any of your products. And that is actually a lot more of your products than you'd like to believe. Shampoos, conditioner, face wash, moisturizer, soap, all of these types of things can have alcohol in them. And if your products have alcohol in them, they'll get thrown away immediately. They have to look over the ingredient list of everything that you bring in to make sure that alcohol is not in there. Because even though most people would not consider ingesting those types of products to get drunk, you have to understand that you are in a mental hospital, that people are there because they are not mentally well. So you need to make sure that there's no possible access to it at all. There will always be that person who will drink the shampoo, drink the face wash, just because it has alcohol in it to try to get some of the effects, especially when you're in a mental hospital setting. So to make sure that everybody stays safe, none of it's allowed. The sixth thing that is banned from mental hospitals is revealing clothing. Now, on the unit that I was in, it was co-ed. There were men and women, anywhere from 18 years old to 60 plus years old. So you needed to make sure that you were appropriately covered, because again, there are people there who are not in their right mental state. That's why you go to the mental hospital, because you're not in your right mental state. And now it's not always a sexual thing. Some people just simply don't like wearing clothes, but we gotta make sure that the rules are the same for everybody all the way around. Make sure that everybody stays safe and that everybody is appropriately clothed at all times. The dress code honestly reminded me of like my elementary school's dress code. You couldn't wear shorts that were too short. Your shirts had to cover your midriff. No undergarments hanging out, those types of things. Can't be too low cut. Just make sure that you're covered. They weren't going to make sure that we were covered from head to toe at all times so nobody could see any inch of skin or anything like that. But they wanted to make sure that everybody was appropriately covered because we were with people of different genders and of such an age range. But not only that, I mentioned in my previous video that this mental hospital, you had to go through other units to get to my unit. And the unit right next to ours was the adolescent unit. So they wanted to make sure that every time we left our unit, we were dressed okay for these children to be seeing us. They don't want grown adults walking through the children's unit not wearing any clothes. Trust me, the adolescent unit had enough issues of its own. It didn't need us bringing more drama in there. I should probably do a video simply on the adolescent unit because that was terrifying and I was a grown adult. So I can't even imagine how terrifying it was for the actual kids in there. Still on clothing, the seventh thing that is banned from mental hospitals is underwire bras. Now this is because if a person wanted to, they could go in and take out those wires and they're sharp. They could use them to hurt themselves or somebody else. So it makes sense, but a lot of women don't think about this sort of thing before going in. You can't wear your normal everyday underwire bra if that's what you normally wear. You either need to bring an alternative like a sports bra, which is more comfortable anyways, and honestly, you're in the mental hospital, so comfort is the most important thing. Fashion, not important. Comfort, very important. Or if that's not an option for you, then they would have to cut out the underwire before they would let you have your bra back. And I don't know about you, but I am not letting anybody cut out anything on any of my bras. That stuff is expensive. So my suggestion is to just stick with the sports bras. Like I said, comfort's more important anyways when you're in a mental hospital situation. The eighth thing that is banned from mental hospitals is a lot of jewelry. Now, they would let you keep things such as wedding rings, or sometimes they would let you keep like a bracelet or a necklace, but it would depend on who you were and kind of what stage you were at in your treatment. If you had just gotten there and were still actively having thoughts of harming yourself, they're not gonna let you have your necklace. But if it's a little bit later and those thoughts are not there anymore, you figured out your medication, then they'll let you have your necklace back, if that makes sense. Basically, it was up to the discretion of the mental health professional that was there in front of you. My friend had a ring that one said she couldn't have because it was too sharp, but the other said she could have because it was fine and it wasn't sharp at all. That inconsistency could be really frustrating. So the only jewelry that I fought for were my rings. At the time, I had a Claudia ring that I always wore and a promise ring from Jake. So I wanted to have those two things on me, but everything else I took out. And a lot of times they make you take out your piercings because the studs and stuff can be sharp. So earrings aren't really allowed. I don't believe nose rings were allowed. I think they let me keep my belly button ring in, but if they saw me messing with it, they probably would have made me take that off too. Everybody has their own coping mechanisms for dealing with things like stress. Some of them are healthy and some of them are not so much. One of those really popular unhealthy ones is smoking cigarettes. Now, luckily, I've never smoked, so this wasn't an issue for me. But the 9th thing that is banned from mental hospitals is cigarettes. So if you're a smoker, you can't do that while you're there. I know. People go to mental hospitals to get themselves together, to figure out what's going on with their brains. And instead, they get taken away from their 2 favorite vices, caffeine and smoking. Nicotine replacement therapy is available in the form of a patch. So they'll give you those throughout the day if you really need them in order to get through the cravings. But actually going outside and smoking is not an option whatsoever. While the caffeine and the alcohol weren't allowed because of the possible interactions between people's medications and those substances, cigarettes aren't allowed because of safety reasons. 1, if you let somebody outside, they could run away, and then what happens? Or 2, you're dealing with fire. And fire, you can burn yourself, you can burn somebody else, you could try to destroy property. It's just not a good idea. So they'll give you the nicotine, they'll give you the drug part of the cigarette. I don't know why I put quotes around it, nicotine is a drug. So they'll give you the drug of the cigarette, but you can't actually get the cigarette itself. So you know so far 9 things that you can't bring with you. You tell your family members or your friends what you want them to bring you during visiting hours so you can have them at the hospital with you. But there's one more thing that you need to make sure of, because the 10th thing that is banned from mental hospitals is plastic bags. So whatever they put those things in can't be plastic. And by plastic bags, I'm mostly referring to grocery bags. You know, the bags that literally have the warning on them that may cause suffocation. They're not allowed in a mental hospital because they can be used to hurt yourself or somebody else. It's not like if Jake walked into the facility with all of my stuff in grocery bags that they would kick him out and not let me have any of my things. But I wouldn't be able to keep those bags. They would take them away immediately and dispose of them. So at that point, you would have all of your stuff, but nowhere to really put it. I mean, in your room, you have a bed, you have a desk, and there are some shelves where you can keep things, but I wanted a bag so that way I could kind of keep all of my stuff together. So for me, it was important to have some sort of storage container that I could put my things in that they weren't going to confiscate from me. Jake ended up bringing me a small cloth bag that I could put my things in, and that was great. I know that now that I've told you all of the things that you can't have at a mental hospital, that it sounds like a great place for you to go, retreat, hang out, have a good time. No, it's not like that, obviously. It's a hospital and you're there for your health. There's a reason that you're there. You got to work on yourself. You focus on yourself. And these things that are banned for a reason. Most of them for safety reasons. They don't want any of the patients to be able to harm themselves or anybody else they come in contact with. But they also want to make sure that you stay safe up here and there aren't any weird sort of reactions or interactions that they're not aware of, which is why they keep you away from things such as caffeine and alcohol. It's annoying to not be able to text your friends whenever you want or to be able to go online and watch YouTube videos. But you're doing something more important with your time when you're in a mental hospital, and that's what you need to focus on. All of these things that are banned are distractions, are things that could possibly get in the way of you getting better. So they need to be out of the picture so you can focus on you. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It means everything to me. If you liked what you saw, please make sure that you click that like button, you click subscribe, and that you click the notification bell so that way you are personally notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any questions or comments about what I said today, or if you have any ideas for future videos, please make sure to leave them on down in the comments down below for me. I'm Devin, this has been Just a Mental Note, and I'll see you next time.